Last time on this series, Jack Thompson had built a peaceful life with his wife, Emily, in the small town of Evergreen. Known to the townspeople as a quiet mechanic, Jack kept his past hidden, a past as a highly trained elite assassin. His sole focus had been to bury the deadly skills he once honed and to protect Emily from ever knowing that part of him. For 5 years, they lived an ordinary life, filled with love and peace. But all of that began to unravel one autumn afternoon when Randy Grimes, a local bully, humiliated Jack and Emily in front of the town. The situation escalated when Randy grabbed Emily, pushing Jack to his limit. In a matter of seconds, Jack's old self resurfaced. He took down Randy and his friends with swift, brutal precision. It was the first time Emily had seen this side of her husband, the lethal predator hiding beneath the surface. The confrontation brought more than just shock. Randy's father, Walter Grimes, was a powerful man with deep connections to the criminal underworld. Within days, Jack sensed that strangers were watching them, men with calculating eyes and dangerous intent. A simple altercation had awakened the ghosts of Jack's past, threatening to destroy the peaceful life he had fought so hard to build. He may have defeated the mercenaries Walter Grimes hired to take him out, but Jack knew the danger was far from over. There would always be another Walter Grimes, someone else in the shadows waiting to come after him. His identity was out now, and more would come. And now Emily was at risk too. Jack had saved her once, but the enemy was coming again, and he couldn't always be there to protect her. It was no longer enough for him to be ready. Emily had to be prepared to defend herself no matter what. Jack made the hardest decision of his life, to bring Emily into his world, the violent world he had tried to shield her from. Now, with no other choice but to prepare for the inevitable, Jack begins the most difficult journey yet, training Emily to defend herself in a world filled with danger. As they leave behind the peaceful life they once knew, Emily must embrace her new reality. She is no longer just Jack's wife, but a warrior in her own right. That evening, as they sat on the porch, the sky painted in soft hues of pink and orange, Jack looked at Emily with a heavy heart. His decision weighed on him, but he knew it was the only way to keep her safe. "Emily," he began, his voice firm but filled with emotion, "I need to teach you how to defend yourself." Emily turned to him, confusion evident in her eyes. "Defend myself? Jack, what are you talking about?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Is this about the incident at the warehouse when Walter Grimes's men took me hostage? You defeated them, Jack. They're gone. I thought this was over. Aren't we safe now?" Jack held her gaze, his eyes unwavering, a deep sadness resting in them. "There are a lot of bad people out there, Emily. They'll be coming after us. After me. Walter Grimes was just the beginning. The men I've crossed, the enemies I've made, they don't forget. And if I'm not there when it happens, you need to be ready. You need to be able to protect yourself." The weight of his words settled over them like the setting sun. Slowly, the reality of the situation sank in. Emily thought back to that day with Randy, to the moment when Jack had transformed before her eyes, taking down 3 men as if they were nothing. Then she remembered the warehouse, the sound of gunfire, the cold terror of being held hostage, and Jack saving her life. The battle wasn't over. It was real, and it was coming for them. Her breath caught in her throat. I don't know if I can do what you do, Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm not like you." Jack took her hand, his grip firm and steady. "You don't have to be like me, Emily. But you need to be able to protect yourself. You need to know how to survive. I won't always be there, and I can't lose you." Emily stared at him, feeling the enormity of his request. It wasn't just about learning to fight, it was about accepting the dangerous world Jack had once lived in, a world that now had her in its sights. After a long silence, she nodded. "Okay," she said softly, her voice steadying with resolve. "Teach me." Jack had never trained anyone outside of his former unit, and training Emily would be different. It required patience, discipline, and precision, but most of all, it required him to share with her the deadly skills he had spent years suppressing. He wasn't just teaching her to defend herself, he was preparing her for war. They drove far from Evergreen, deep into the wilderness, to an old cabin Jack had kept for emergencies. Hidden among towering trees and rugged mountains, it was the perfect place to focus on what lay ahead. Emily would have to learn quickly, and this isolated place was ideal for the intense training she needed. The cabin became their base, and the surrounding forest their training ground. Jack set up a makeshift boot camp, a target range for firearms, a sparring area for hand-to-hand combat, and an obstacle course to test agility and endurance. The first few days were rough. Emily struggled with the feel of the gun in her hands, her muscles tense and unfamiliar with the weight. She missed every shot on her first attempt, frustration flashing in her eyes. Jack stayed patient, guiding her through every step. He taught her how to control her breathing, how to steady her aim, how to trust herself. Slowly, with Jack's guidance, Emily's shots began to hit their mark. By the end of the first week, she was consistently hitting the bullseye, her hands no longer trembling with uncertainty. "You're getting good," Jack said one afternoon as she reloaded with smooth precision, her shots quick and deadly accurate. "Faster than I expected." But the more Emily learned, the more Jack's worry grew. He was proud of her progress, but every step reminded him of the reason she needed these skills. They were preparing for the worst, for the day when the enemy would come again. Next came hand-to-hand combat. This was where Emily struggled the most. Jack taught her how to throw punches, how to block and counter, but her movements were awkward and stiff at first. Each session left her covered in bruises, her muscles aching from the hours spent sparring. "You have to be faster," Jack told her as they sparred one afternoon. "In a real fight, hesitation could get you killed." Emily nodded, gritting her teeth through the pain. She knew he was right. She pushed herself harder, her punches growing sharper, her counters quicker. Day by day, she improved. Jack tested her resilience, forcing her to adapt under pressure. And every time Emily rose to the challenge, weeks passed, and Emily's transformation was undeniable. Jack introduced knife training, teaching her how to disarm an opponent and fight in close quarters. Emily's once soft hands now moved with precision and confidence, each strike purposeful. She was no longer the schoolteacher who had flinched at violence. She was becoming someone capable of facing the dangers Jack had long tried to protect her from. The final stage of her training was swordsmanship. Jack had learned it during his time in the military's most secretive units, and now he passed it on to Emily. Handling a blade required more than just skill. It required balance, discipline, and an understanding of lethal intent. At first, Emily hesitated, the weight of the sword foreign in her hands. But Jack guided her, showing her how to move with grace and power. With time, Emily grew more confident, each strike fluid, each movement precise. As the weeks turned into months, Emily's transformation was complete. She wasn't the same woman who had been taken hostage by Walter Grimes's men. She had become a warrior, someone Jack knew could hold her own, if the worst came to pass. When they returned to Evergreen, the town seemed the same, quiet, peaceful, untouched by the storm Jack knew was coming. But Emily was different. She carried herself with newfound confidence, her steps purposeful, her eyes always scanning their surroundings. The gentle schoolteacher was still there, but she was no longer someone who could be taken lightly. The townspeople noticed. Randy Grimes and his crew, who had once mocked and humiliated Jack, avoided Emily when they saw her. There was something different about her now, a quiet, unspoken warning not to test her. Even those who didn't know what had happened could sense it. Emily still smiled with her students, still laughed with her friends, but beneath the surface was a woman prepared for war. Jack saw it in the way she moved, the way her fingers subtly flexed, always ready to react. She wasn't just prepared, she was ready to face whatever threat came next. One evening, as they sparred in the woods, Emily swept Jack's legs out from under him, pinning him to the ground with a triumphant grin. He looked up at her, breathless, a mixture of pride and awe filling his chest. "That was impressive," Jack said, catching his breath. Emily smiled, but her eyes were serious. "I'll protect us, Jack, no matter what." Jack pulled her close, his heart pounding. He had taught her everything he knew, but it was her strength, her love, and her unwavering resolve that made her truly unstoppable. Though Evergreen seemed unchanged, Jack knew better. The danger hadn't passed. It was only a matter of time before someone else came looking for him, someone more dangerous, someone smarter. But this time, they were ready. Jack had brought Emily into his world, and she had risen to meet the challenge. She was no longer just his wife. She was his partner, his equal, prepared to fight by his side. And when the next storm came, they would face it together, stronger and more dangerous than anyone could have ever imagined.